Who is the meanest? Who is the loudest? Who is the baddest? Who is the most caring? Who is the sneakiest? Who's the cleanest? Who's the messiest? Who gets in trouble the most? Who has the worst attitude? Who's the funniest? Who eats the most? Who will be the last to leave the house after they are grown? Who will put us in a nursing home?
Hello, everybody. So, hoping you guys have had a good week. Mine's been great. Just getting ready for this Sunday's service. So hope you're all doing well. And for those of you that have started your school week this week, hope it's going great. The Zoom lessons, yay! Hope that's going good. So this week, what we're going to talk about is, I was just thinking, like, we've been in week 5, I think, or 4. I don't know, because we had isolation, then lockdown. Week 5 of lockdown. And we're all at home, staying with our parents, our guardians, our brothers and sisters, for those that have them. And it's like, it's great, right? Love the little brothers and the little sisters. I'm sure they're not putting us to shame in whatever they're up to. But it's sometimes not very easy staying with the same group of people 24 hours, 7 days a week. And in today's service, we're going to learn from a young guy, young, then he grew a little bit old, and learning about his family and what he went through, and kind of his story just teaches us to keep trusting in God, and kind of some of the things that he endured, and and they will have us thinking a little bit about how we respond to certain situations and what we can learn about the way that he responded to those. Joseph was the second youngest son of Jacob out of 12 sons and 13 children. Joseph was also his dad's favorite, and his dad favored him so much that he bought him a coat of many colors. But not only that, Joseph was like any other little brother or little sister, sometimes, and used to tell over his bigger brothers to his dad. He'd tell his dad whenever they did something wrong when he was away. We know from the Bible that teenage Joseph spent his time looking after the sheep, and in that time he also had prophetic dreams, and when he translated these dreams, they showed that Joseph will one day be in a position of great power, and that his brothers may well be serving him. His brothers hated this. They didn't like him, and they hated the whole situation so much that they wanted to kill him. I know. I think you're probably looking at your own brother and sister thinking, would you? Probably not. So after hearing all these dreams, Joseph's brothers plotted to kill him. But his oldest brother saved him. And his oldest brother was like, no, let's not kill him. Let's take his coat of many colors, put him in the well whilst we decide what we do. And so they did. And they took his coat, put him in a well. And whilst they were thinking, somebody came past, and they decided they were going to sell Joseph to that person as a slave. And they did that. And they took his coat, put an animal's blood on it, took it to their dad and said, oh, sorry, Joseph's died. An animal killed him, and all we've got is this coat to prove it. And so it became that Joseph was now estranged from his family. He lived all the way in Egypt and worked as a slave for one of Pharaoh's captains, Potiphar. And as he did that, Joseph worked really hard. He was promoted, and then he came across another bad situation whereby Potiphar's wife basically tried to get him into trouble. And Joseph resisted this trouble, but Potiphar's wife told her husband, and he ended up in prison. And while in prison, Joseph Can you imagine? You've been thrown in the well, sold to a slave, worked as a servant, and now you're in prison, right? Great. So he's in prison, and then these other two guys come into prison, of which one of them worked. They were in prison for doing something, and one of them worked for Pharaoh, and they also wanted someone to translate about me so that I may be pardoned. But it was going to be another 2 years before Joseph would be remembered by the guy whose dreams he translated, and Joseph would eventually be set free. So 2 years later, Joseph is then remembered by this guy and is asked to translate Pharaoh's dreams. And so he does that, and he does the first dream and a few more after, until Pharaoh gives him a position and Joseph is promoted to governor. And later on we know that after there's a drought, that his brothers fall to his doorstep looking for food because he's the governor. And when he recognizes them, he serves them, but he also puts them in prison for 3 days until they recognize who he is and they ask for forgiveness. And he's able to be reconciled with his dad. But what does Joseph's story show us? Joseph endured for 15 whole years till he became the person that he knew he was going to be from when he was a teenager. So the first thing for me is Joseph knew his purpose. He knew when he was in prison or he was working as a servant that I'm doing this, but I'm destined for somewhere else. So I encourage you in this time of lockdown and of doing Zoom lessons, which means maybe you're not going on the bus to get to school, etc., etc. Spend some time, get a book, write down the things that you think you could be. What do you think you're called to do? Maybe ask your parents, what am I good at? What do you think I'm good at? And write it down. We also see Joseph, when he was in prison, that he used his talent. And it was his talent that got him recognized. So when somebody said, I've got these dreams, I need someone to translate my dreams, and Joseph said, I'll do it. I mean, we can think of many other responses Joseph could have given, you know? You could be thinking, well, I'm stuck here in prison. I ain't doing that. So angry. I'm so upset at the world. I'm not doing that. But Joseph didn't do that. He used his talent, even in a time where he was confined and restricted. And I encourage you to do the same. Maybe your talent is football. So see what you can do. Can you learn some new skills, maybe on YouTube? Can you do some exercises that will help you refine your skill? Find the time. Find that thing that you can do that will promote your talent. The other thing that we learn from Joseph is about forgiveness. And I mean, Joseph, he had some big things to hold on to. You know, like your brothers sold you, they threw you in the well, and then you've had this kind of really difficult life after. But Joseph forgave. And I believe that even in the moment when he was enduring, that really, even though we see him actually forgiving his brothers when they came to him, I don't believe that's when he really forgave them. I believe he forgave them even before that. Because then he was still able to serve and to do things, you know, happily, to be promoted, to just be a good person and have a good attitude. He must have let that unforgiveness go by that time. So I encourage you, don't keep it in. Forgive. Maybe explain to somebody, you know, you did this to me. That wasn't very nice. But when you do, be ready to forgive them. So this is it for me. Have a great week, guys. As you're listening to this, it's my 40th birthday. Woohoo! Happy birthday to me! All right, have a great week.